Okay, good morning, church. Thank you, Master Mike, for this opportunity to share. So I will take this session to share, how we can really be more proactive in helping the poor. So, today we so much wealth and boasting on social media. People boast the food they eat, their travels, their clothes. We see nice shopping malls, Michelin star restaurant, huge indoor playground for children. We share our experience on social media, and then it becomes a battle, of who can post the most interesting experience. When we are surrounded by wealth, we forgot that there are billions of people who are still barely surviving. Survival means to earn enough money to buy food. Billions do not have employment that pays salary every month. So I'd like to share with you the parable of the sheep and the goat in Matthew chapter 25. And here Jesus calls us, to help those who are less fortunate than us. And Jesus used a very extreme result, so that you do this, you go to heaven, you don't do this, you go to hell. So it is a very extreme uh, conclusion of what will happen to you. But during Jesus' time, there are plenty of beggars who have no food, even water to drink. There are many sick people who cannot afford medicine and so forth. So Jesus calls us to help those whose life is a daily struggle, trying to earn enough money to buy food, where hunger is a daily problem. No, in Singapore, we don't see beggars, and begging is not allowed, but there are poor people in Singapore. So whether overseas or in Singapore, we must be more proactive to provide help to the less fortunate. In our busy world, we give the excuse that we have no time, but statistics shows we spend a lot of time on our handphone. And I like this phrase by Ephesians. I'll read it aloud. For it is by grace you have been saved, though by through faith, and this is not from yourself. It is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has prepared in advance for us. Now, this common but very often misinterpreted verse. We quote verse 8 and 9, and very often verse 10 is left out. So, to understand the whole meaning, we have to read verse 8 to verse 10. Now, the confusion lies in the definition of the two words, works and good works. So, we seem to think that, well, they are about the same, only good works is slightly better than works. But actually, they have totally complete meaning. Now, the NIV uses good deeds and they don't use good works. But King James use good works. So sometimes it is very confusing, because verse 9 seems to say that we don't need to do works, because so that no one can boast. And it's the grace of God that have been saved, which is true. We are saved by the grace of God. But what verse 10 says, we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God has prepared in advance for us. We do not do good works to be saved. We do good works because we are saved. So, uh, what is all right? So, what is good works? What are works? All right. So, works are done for show. They are acts of piety, like praying, fasting, giving donations. But these are not wrong, because we have to pray, we have to fast, and we have to give donation. But the intent is important. Now, are they done for show? Some give donations because they want to please a VIP, or because they want to get to know the VIP, or from the donation they get publicity. They care less about what their donations are for, but they care more for the publicity that they get. So the key is we should not do works so that no one can boast. Works done to boast are condemned by Jesus. So even in donation, Jesus said, don't let your left hand know what the right hand is doing. And it's actually very sad because we in the charity world, we often face this quote, which is sadly quite true. And this quote is that it is more important who you know rather than what you don't do. So to raise fund, who you know is more important than what you do. It's very sad that you know, people give just to be uh, associated with some VIPs. So what are good works? You know, First John says, "Dear children, let us not love with words and deed, but with action and in truth." See, action is very important. All right. And Matthew chapter 5 says, "In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Our good deeds glorify God. And James says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but no deeds? Faith by itself is not accompanied by action instead." So do not confuse the definition of works with good works or good deeds. Jesus called us to do good deeds because that glorify God. Now, this, very often we say we don't want to hear about the needs of the poor. We don't want to see the suffering, hardship. We don't want to discuss this subject. So we have to open our hearts, our ears, our minds, to those who are suffering and less fortunate than us. Now, several years ago, I went to Indonesia and I had a relative staying there, and I said, I like to visit some slums. And then he brought me to a low-cost housing estate. So I say, brother, this is not a slum, this is a low-cost housing estate. And so my relative, who was born in Indonesia, he lived in Jakarta all his life, he doesn't know what a slum is. Now, this is very, very astonishing that he has lived in Jakarta all his life, and yet he doesn't know, have never seen a slum. But statistics shows that 564,000 households are living in slums in Jakarta, and 20% of Jakarta households are living in slums, which means that 1 in 5 are living in slums. And yet, with this huge amount of people living in slum in Jakarta, my relative doesn't even know. So we can insulate ourselves, and we live in a world where the poor are totally invisible to us. So in this sermon, I like to open everybody's eye to what it means. So you can see this family and the house they're living in. The children are abandoned by both parents, and they live with the grandmother who has passed away, and now the neighbor is looking after them. Now we have been serving the poor since 2001 for the past 25 years, and it's said that after 20 years, there are still many poor people, So I want to share more pictures so that everyone has a good idea of what poverty means. So this is a family. The father looks after ducks. The mother has ad hoc jobs, and they are unable to provide for the children who could drop out of schools. So these are the two children that we are considering admitting into our children's home. So so very often these children they have to skip school because there's no food. So they have to go and earn money collecting wild kangkong or doing some small ad hoc job to earn money. And poverty is very widespread because you can see if you go to Prevang, you can see there's no shopping malls, no office complex, and rice farming is the main job. And here we see a family, the father divorced the wife and is uncontactable. The mother works in Phnom Penh, and so now the children have to live with their grandparents. So you can see the state of the house they live in. All right. So they really live in such poor condition. Like you must understand. So we are often under why is Prevang so poor? Why are there no investment? Now, to build factories, you need two things. And these two things Prevang don't have. That is cheap electricity and reliable transport. And Cambodia has one of the highest electricity costs in, in Southeast Asia. And it's cheaper to build a factory in Phnom Penh where the infrastructure is there. And also, if you build a factory in Prevang, the transportation cost is very high. So these are factors that discourage people from investing in the province. And here you see more and more houses that are in very bad conditions. And you know the dropout rate of 55% of the children drop out from school. By the age of 17, they drop out of school to earn money to help support the family. And even many jobs requires you to speak English and now Chinese, or to have skills. But when you don't have the skills, you can't use computer, you can't speak English, you can't use Word, email, Excel, or Excel, then it's very hard for the youth to get a job. So they remain stuck in poverty. So now, so you can see, I would like to explain more reasons, why are they poor and why are they unable to uplift themselves. Now, one of the key problems that people became poor is medical costs. Sadly, some doctors charge very high fees, and prescribe expensive treatment like intravenous drips. So somehow the villagers feel that to have an IV drip is more powerful than just taking a pill. So they like to go home with an IV drip. And when I look at the IV drip, it is just saline solution. Actually, they are just dripping salt water into the veins, but they are being charged a high fee for that. So very often, the villagers won't have money to pay for this medical costs, and very often they borrow money. And the interest rate can be 5 to 10% a month, not a year. And very often, this led them to sell off their land, and they became poor. So there are many reasons why these people are unable to lift themselves out of poverty, not because they're lazy, but simply the opportunities are not there. So again, you can see, when we go to the village, we only admit those children who are very, very, very poor. And another reason for poverty is that there are what we call microfinance institution. They often give loans to encourage entrepreneurship. So that sounds very good. Then say, oh, why don't you take a small loan and you start the village store? You can sell some snacks or phone cards, or you buy small pigs and chicken, raise some livestock. And and on the surface, it seems very good. Oh, we lend you money so that you can start your own business and lift yourself out of poverty. Sounds very good. But a farmer who has grown rice for 30 years, he cannot suddenly be expected to understand supply chain, market saturation, cash flow management overnight with no training. And often the business fail within months because there isn't enough demand to cover the high interest loan. And when the family cannot pay off the loan, the worst thing is that they lose their land, because very often microfinance institution, they lend you the money, but they want to take your land title as collateral. Even for a small amount as $500, they say, yes, you pledge your land for the loan for $500. And if you can't repay that, you lose your land. And so the farmers, because of this loan, now become landless laborer. And this really makes them drop into the poverty trap. So this is whenever my staff go to Cambodia, go to the village, they will take notes. And this is one of the notes of a family. The children have no one to take care of them properly because the grandmother is seriously ill with cervical cancer. Grandma has to sell her rice fields to pay for chemotherapy and medication, and has to work as a dishwasher to earn money to support her grandchildren. Grandma has been to hospital for treatment 6 times a week, once a week in Phnom Penh. And each time she spent 1.4 million reals per week for her hospital treatment. In the child's family, there are two elderly people. The first is the single grandmother, 60 years old, and the second is the grandmother who take care of the children and she is sick. As for the child's grandmother, she's not at home with them because the house is too old and dilapidated. She goes to live with other children, drink white wine almost every day, and sells vegetables that she collects around the house for daily life. The children want to come to stay at home village to study, and if they continue to stay at the village with the guardian, they will stop school earlier because the grandma can't support them to study. So this is one report from our children, from our staff. You can see this is the kind of situation many of them are in. So you can see there are literally thousands of people living in the houses like this, and this microfinance really is sometimes a mechanism for what we call as asset stripping. And but the families don't just borrow money to start business. Sometimes they borrow money for medical emergency, crop failures, you know, and when there's a harvest, poor harvest, due to a drought, they have to borrow money, and very often this borrowing of money ended up with them losing their land. So we have a project where we build houses for the very poor family. And you can see we build this very, very nice wooden house. And also it comes with a toilet. And, when they receive this house, the family of really cry with tears of joy. You see at the bottom of the slide, you can see the difference between their old house and the new house. Now, Previn has a population of 1.1 million. And, 15 to 20% of them live in very poor houses like what we are shown above. So if you say 15% of 1.1 million, that means more than 150,000 people are living in shacks like this. So while we have been building 400 houses, we are just the tip of the iceberg. There are 150,000 families that need homes. So our 400 house is just a drop in the bucket. So you can see here, this is the house on the right side where they are living, and then the house that we have given them. So why do they remain poor? Because they have poor education, they have high dropout rates. They can't compete with the urban youth in Phnom Penh who are much more educated. There's poor sanitation and hygiene, causing illnesses, and illnesses deplete savings and even cause them to borrow money at high interest rate. And also there are harvesting machines. Before they used to, if you have no land, you can help to plant rice and harvest rice. But now they all use machines, low-cost machines from China. So now they no longer need to employ people to do the planting of rice and harvesting. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so you can see the house before and the house now they're giving. So we identify those that are living in very pathetic condition, like what you see on the right-hand side. So with President Trump, things have got worse. There was a big scare when he proposed a 49% tariff on Cambodian government. Now, Cambodian government factories are the main source, is the biggest industry in Cambodia. So with this 49% tariff, that will affect the government industry terribly. But they have reduced it to 19%. But still, 19% is quite high. But the price of admission to get the 19% rate, Cambodia has to make huge concession. That means they eliminate tariff on 100% of US agricultural and industrial goods entering Cambodia. So I don't know, America is very efficient in agriculture. So if they export their agriculture into Cambodia, there will be a big competition. So one one of the projects that we are doing is providing wells. And you can see on the right, we have our own equipment, our own well drilling rig and lorries, and 30%, of people in Preveng still don't have access to proper water. That means they take water from river, from open ponds and so forth. And so wells are very important. And what is even causing them bigger problem is during the dry season, the water table drop and all the shallow wells are completely dry. So you can see in the picture on the right, we don't use the traditional hand pump. We're using an airlift pump, that needs a generator. So it's more expensive, but because of the drop in water table, we need to use airlift pump instead of the cheaper hand pump. So this again is causing the dropping of water table is causing more hardship to the villagers. Now, this is a sterilized water system for schools. This is something I designed myself, and we built more than 50 of these. I'm 78 years old, as what Pastor Mike says, and we are doing more and more in Cambodia. So instead of a children's home, we now have community projects, and one of our community projects is to build safe drinking water for students. Now, unlike Singapore, tap water is not safe to drink, and many schools do not have pipe water. And even in their home, they don't have safe water to drink. And to buy bottled water, that is too expensive. I know Cambodia is very hot, and children, they like to run around and they get very thirsty, but there's no water. So this project is very much loved by the students and teachers. So imagine the poor kids in the hot weather running around and thirsty and no water to drink. So this water project is really much appreciated by all the students. And so we sort of tie up with the parable of the sheep and goat, and Jesus said, I was thirsty and he gave me water to drink. So maybe this is one example of how we can provide water to the thirsty, in this case, thirsty student. And our children home are still going strong. More than 200 children have graduated. They are working and studying in Phnom Penh. Many have started families and have children. So it's really wonderful to see these children doing so well after leaving our home. And our home is not just a home for sleeping, eating, and going to school, but we want to develop talents. We get the children to do hip hop dancing, and here you can see the grade 2, primary 2 children are learning how to bake cookies. So we it's a place where they develop good habits and learn about discipline, honesty, and taking responsibility. And now this last year we embarked on our very exciting project, and this is to convert waste into useful fertilizers in 24 hours or less. So this is a machine. We bought this machine last year. It cost $250,000. Now this biomass digester will convert waste into fertilizers. So while you can think that, oh wow, $250,000 is a lot of money, But if you do a fundraising campaign and you get 1,000 people to contribute $250, you can end up with the $250,000. So don't be afraid of project that cost money, because now with active fundraising, you can raise that kind of money. And don't go for easy projects like bringing secondhand clothes and distribute them. Think of what can really change life. And so again, Jesus' parable say, I was hungry and give me food. So this organic fertilizer will enable the farmers to reduce the cost as chemical fertilizers has become more expensive. And also, strangely enough, due to the war in Ukraine, because Ukraine is a major manufacturer of chemical fertilizers. So this is, but beside the biomass digester, we also need this called circulator machine to convert fertilizer into pellets. So I always tell people that, OHF is a good opportunity for you to learn a lot of things. We are not a charity that just raise funds and give to other people, but we are also an engineering company. We are also now, you can see, we have biomass machine, we have circulator machine, we are doing production. So OHF is not just looking after children and bringing up children, but now we are also into manufacturing. All right. Do go to our website because we have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel. You can see a lot of things. So I just want you to look at this video so that you can start thinking of what you can do to help the poor. No, as I said, expose yourself to more information. No, don't live in the glass ivory tower and do not know what's happening outside. So our videos will give you a better idea of what one can do, to really be involved in this helping of poor. As the this as in the beginning, God has given us gift. So I'm sure we have one of the gift would be to be able to help those who are less fortunate than ourselves. Oh, seek God's will in all you do, and He will show you the path to take. So don't let us not be concerned about what we can do, Be concerned about what we can do with God's help. Now, if 100 people just combine to donate $10 a month, they can sponsor 4 children to live in our children's home, or sponsor 20 poor children. So I always tell people, never use the lack of money and as an excuse for not trying to help, So we we have to change our mindset. Instead of just focusing on our own need, we start to see what we can do for others. And in fact, by looking at how we can help others, we lower our own stress because, when we do more compassion work, we think less about our own problems and more about what we can do for others. There are so many Bible verses that tells us what will happen when we do God's will, And you become a family to Jesus. And Mark chapter 3 says, whoever does the will of God is my brother and sisters. And yes, I think rich or poor or middle class, we are all one family in the eyes of God. And Hebrew says, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. I've been doing this for more than 25 years. And honestly, without God's help, without the Holy Spirit prompting me, I will not be able to continue for so long. And not only that, I wish to continue to do even more in the years to come, even though I'm now 78 years old. And John says, if anyone will is to do God's will, he will know whether the teaching is from God. And finally, Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. This is a very powerful statement, that perhaps Master Mike can elaborate further. He said, when Jesus said, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. So, Christ gave his life for us so that he can live his life through us. We are God's hand, and whatever God wants to do, he do it through us. And so many verses. First Peter says, live such good lives among pagans, that even though they accuse you of wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God. And Colossians chapter 1 verse 10 says, live worthy lives worthy of the God, and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good works, growing in the knowledge of God. So, let us give our life to glorify God through our work and through our action. And by doing so, we strengthen our faith, and we come to realize that God is real, Jesus is alive, and he is with us all the time. If we do his will, he will be our companion. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share, and I'll pass this now to Pastor Mike.